and virtually via Zoom to reconvene the public roundtable on the tip wage reporting and unemployment insurance in the District of Columbia, originally convened on Wednesday, October the 11th, 2023. This hearing is being streamed and recorded on the committee's YouTube channel named EAL Committee, or it may be found on the DC Council website. The purpose of today's roundtable is to discuss the status of implementation of the tip wage portal and the administration of the unemployment insurance program with the Director of the Department of Employment Services, Dr. Unique Morris Hughes. During the original convening of the roundtable last month, we heard from public witnesses who shared their concerns about the tip wage reporting portal and fines associated with violations of the reporting requirements. Today, we will conduct an evaluation of the scheduled launch of the tip wage reporting system as required by the Tip Wage Fairness Amendment Act of 2018 that was enacted into law on December 13th, 2018. The Tip Wage Workers Fairness Amendment Act of 2018, passed by the Council, requires the quarterly reporting of wages paid and tips received by tipped employees to the Department of Employment Services. Additionally, to expedite the filing of these required wage reports, the Act requires the agency to create an internet-based portal. The tip wage portal was intended to accept the submission of electronic spreadsheets with wage information instead of requiring the manual entry of data. Our hope was that the portal would be a user-friendly platform that enabled employees to easily report alleged wage theft violations. Today, I hope to discuss these details of reporting and help the public maybe better understand how DOES implements this amendment. And then next we will move to the topic of unemployment insurance. And so the district government, as its authorized agent, the Department of Employment Services, administers the unemployment insurance program, which falls under the jurisdiction of the Office of Unemployment Compensation. Unemployment insurance program aids individuals who have lost their employment through no fault of their own by providing temporary financial assistance to individuals who have met the eligibility. The objective of discussing the administration of the insurance program is to review the performance and effectiveness of the program, identify areas of improvement, and learn more about the agency's programs, updates, and remedies for as they can be measured. We also want to make sure that we are prepared for a potential government shutdown. We were at this point in October, and here we are in November, back again. Most people in the DC area will file for unemployment in DC, even if they live in Maryland or Virginia or work remotely, because people file for unemployment in the jurisdiction in which they work, not where they live. And so that makes it very complicated for little DC when you have so many federal employees working in DC, but nevertheless non-residents of DC. Congress has 8 days thereabouts to come up with a short-term solution. I think it is about 8 days again to keep the government open. And we need to be prepared for what will be a surge of unemployment, could be a surge of unemployment claims if a solution is not reached. So today we'll learn a little bit about what our plans are to handle that impending situation. Furthermore, today we will seek a deeper understanding of the status of this fraudulent unemployment insurance claims and the high volume of program codes used to process the claims. DC is not alone in the application of fraudulent claims. It happens across the nation. Wherever there's a pot of money, there are those who feel that they should have it as opposed to those that it really belongs to. And so we'll be looking a little bit at that today. And so do we have any colleagues on? All right, we will move right into hearing from our government witness. That's where we left off on October the 11th. And Dr. Hughes is here, so I'll ask her to raise her right hand again for this session. Do you swear and affirm that your testimonies given today, that they will be truthful and complete?
I do.
Thank you very much, and you can begin when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, council members, and staff of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor. I am Dr. Unique Morris Hughes, Director of the DC Department of Employment Services. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to discuss the work of our Office of Unemployment Compensation and our Office of Wage and Hour. At the last committee roundtable regarding unemployment compensation, I provided general UI updates and our detailed efforts to improve UI processes, including identity verification. And to continue that discussion, I'm pleased to share the following updates. 1, as of September 30th, 2023, 15,621 traditional unemployment insurance claims have been filed and paid for this fiscal year, with a total of $75,122,510 in traditional benefits paid out. DOES has been awarded an $869,000 ARPA Integrity Grant from the Department of Labor. This grant will provide the district needed funds to target and reduce fraud within the unemployment insurance system. We utilize these funds to strengthen our multi-layer risk mitigation strategy by using multi-factor authentication and identity proofing solutions. DOES will deploy trusted technology to identify and categorize different types and sources of fraud, allowing the district to better allocate resources to determine if claims are being presented and truly fraudulent, or if they are incomplete and inaccurate based on barriers to access from underserved communities. Finally, by the end of October, we will have a live landing page in partnership with ID.me, which is a trusted, secure service used by various state and federal entities for identity verification. This new feature will allow for individuals to verify their identities online through ID.me, rather than having to come in person to any one of our 4 American Job Centers, which is our current practice. We are very excited to be able to offer this option to claimants, as it will make filing easier, while also acting as a security measure to help fight fraud. Claimants who are unable to or do not wish to use ID.me online will still be able to provide their original identity documents for verification in person. We will also be deploying ID.me kiosks and training staff during the month of October and November to streamline service for in-person document verification. Along with the kiosk rollout, we have recently made several other changes to the American Job Centers based on our customer feedback to improve customer experience. Now, when customers come to the American Job Center at our headquarters, they can check in and enter their information, including their phone number, into our new system. When a specialist is available to see them, they receive a text message alert. We have also created separate designated spaces for UI customers and workforce customers to sit. And this new system has been very well received. It has helped alleviate anxiety for customers about losing their place in line and helped staff to better manage the flow of customers. Additionally, while we're relieved that Congress passed a continuing resolution to keep the federal government open, I want to briefly share with you, Councilmember Bonds and the public, 2 weeks ago, DOES staff was hard working, making sure that we were fully prepared to handle an influx of claims for our furloughed federal workers. We performed system upgrades, developed communication and guides for federal workers, and had specifically trained staff ready to handle claims from federal workers. Rest assured, Councilmember Bonds, in the event of a future shutdown, like next Friday possibly, DOES stands ready to help reduce the economic impact of the shutdown on these workers and the district as a whole. Today, we're also discussing our Office of Wage and Hour and our work pertaining to tipped workers. The Office of Wage and Hour is responsible for the enforcement of DC wage laws and requirements. Wage and hour staff enforce compliance and may recover back wages for employees who have not been paid under the DC wage laws, either administratively or through court action. The Office of Wage and Hour had a very active FY23. In the last 12 months, they received 352 claims for various wage law violations. They recovered over $71,000 in back wages and damages paid to workers and allocated over $300,000 in penalties through the wage hour audits that will be used to further outreach, provide outreach education and enforcement of wage theft laws. The office hosted 6 webinars and outreach meetings, 1 in-person training for the DC Society of Human Resource Managers, and 3 social media campaigns to help employers better understand their responsibilities and requirements to help employees know their rights. This includes education around the district's minimum wage and tip minimum wage. I'd also like to make mention that our office partners with the Office of Attorney General by supporting their investigations and court action as well. The district minimum wage is currently $17 an hour. The tip minimum wage is based on the base minimum wage for tip wage employees as of July 1, 2023 is currently $18 an hour. And if an employee's hourly tip earnings average weekly plus the tip minimum wage do not equal the district's full minimum wage, the employer must pay the employee difference. The difference between the district's minimum wage and the tip minimum wage is referred to the tip credit for employers. In November 2022, DC voters passed Initiative 82, the District of Columbia Tip Credit Elimination Act. As a result, the tip credit and tip minimum wage will gradually be phased out. The tip minimum wage will increase incrementally over the next few years until it's fully phased out by 2027. At that time, employers will be required to pay tipped employees DC minimum wage, and the use of any tipped credit will be eliminated. The next tip wage increase is set to take place in July of 2024 and will increase the tip minimum wage from $8 to $10 per hour. As we work through this phase out process, DOES continues to monitor compliance and provide education to both employers and tipped workers. As part of the district's compliance efforts, employers are required to submit a tipped wage report via the tipped wage reporting portal. DOES continuously monitors submissions of these reports. When monitoring these reports, we look to make sure the following requirements have been met. A, that employers who employ tipped workers are submitting quarterly wage reports in the tip portal. B, that the submitted quarterly tip report shows that employers are correctly paying the tip minimum wage as required by law. And C, that the submitted quarterly report shows the employer is correctly paying the full minimum wage required by law. Non-compliance results in further investigation. DOES will continue to monitor the quarterly report submitted through the current tip portal and the new tip portal until the tip credit is fully eliminated. While we do not audit information in the, while we do audit information in the tipped portal, I want to encourage all employees, tipped or not, to report any violations of the district's wage laws directly to the Office of Wage and Hour. If you have not been paid minimum wage, or if an employer wrongfully withholds all or part of your paycheck, you can go to our website at does.dc.gov to file a claim. Thank you, Councilmember Bonds, for the opportunity to appear before you today and discuss the work of the Department of Employment Services. With that, I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. I just want to make it clear to the public that if you are an employee, if you are employed in the District of Columbia, you have a minimum wage that you can expect. If you're a tip worker, there's the minimum wage for tip workers, but your employer has to also make up the difference so that you too leave with what is the current minimum wage. Is that correct? Okay. Now, all of this information is reported to your department.
Yes.
And so in reporting all of this information, where did we go wrong in putting this kind of burden on your agency? It's a lot.
It is a lot. And the compliance mandates have increased. The staffing hasn't necessarily increased to support it. I will tell you that I view the work and labor law compliance as very important civil rights work. And you may ask, well, why? How are you connecting that to civil rights? Fair and equal pay and insurance that fair and equal pay occurs, I think is, an important act that every citizen and district resident should be entitled to, and that I view it as our responsibility to ensure that businesses understand compliance requirements, that employees of businesses here in the district also understand. So there's an education component. And then when we have bad actors, and I'm not saying we have many, but when we do, we enforce and we make whole. And so it's very important work, but the compliance requirements have grown, but the staffing hasn't necessarily grown with it.
So today, if I own a small cafe, what am I required to file with you?
Okay. So if you own a small cafe.
And I have 3 employees.
Okay. So I'm only going to focus because there's a lot of things you'd be required to file with us. So I'm just going to focus on
File with your
Office of Wage and Hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's lots of things.
Okay.
So one is the wage reports. You'd be responsible for submitting these quarterly wage reports. If you were a cafe that had a wait staff, you would be responsible for ensuring that the tip minimum wage and that the tip credit is being paid, and that you are reporting that through certified payroll records to our agency.
All right. I wanted you to be very clear so no one can somehow misconstrue what the requirements are.
Okay.
And that's one of my biggest worries when I talk to most of the business community are very clear as to what is required of them. But when I look at the numbers you just cited, where you indicated, I believe, 71,000 in back wages.
Mm-hmm.
But you also collected 300,000 in penalties. When you say penalties, that tells me there are folk who are not clear as to what the requirement is still today. And there are new businesses cropping up every day. So I just want to make sure, please listen to this tape, everyone, and know that you do have a reporting requirement.
Yes, and we have a plethora of information on the DOES.dc.gov website that you can peruse and look. We also have it in different languages. We've tried to put everything out there we possibly can to help businesses and employees.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Um, let me continue with our tip wage. How do you see the tipped wage law being applied if it were to sunset even earlier, let's say in 2016 or even July 2025?
So the most prominent substantive change would be the tipped wage reporting. So the first thing is that tip wage reporting would go away. We would no longer enforce and monitor the tip wage reporting. So that's the biggest actionable area that we would see change immediately.
So for the industry, what would they need to do to prepare to have this law sunset?
So I could speak to directly from the labor law enforcement side of the house. I'm sure that there's some other administrative actions that, maybe depending on how small of the business is, that maybe a DSLBD or DMPED could support with. But first is one, informing staff and administrative staff and employees of the elimination of the tipped wage, making sure if they have a payroll provider, that their payroll provider understands what they are no longer required to report and submit reporting. I'm not saying that it will be as easy as just turning on a light switch, but what really changes is the reporting requirements. If you have a business in the district that does not implement the tip wage, you're not reporting to us the same way that businesses that have tipped employees are. So there isn't as much other than the reporting stops, but it's notification. It's preparing your payroll provider, or if you do it in-house, maybe your bookkeeper, making sure they understand the new compliance requirements. But it's as simple as that.
And of course, it's actually paying that extra $2
Well, yes,
per hour.
that's correct. So it's getting
Okay.
ready to come into compliance with what the minimum wage would do.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes, all right. I just wanted to, it's just $2 to the companies that are maybe listening, $2 per hour. I think all of this is important when we put it out there. There has been some suggestions within the community, the business community, that perhaps this law can sunset earlier than 2027. I think they're finding it a bit cumbersome to actually be in compliance. And the fact that we are collecting penalties or fines tells me that there is some unreadiness on their part to be in compliance at this time. Now, we also heard from our public witnesses that there were some mistakes that had been made. And I know you are concerned about those.
Yes. So Councilmember Bonds, I was informed by members of the community, the Restaurant Association, of communication that went out to restaurateurs and businesses that are implementing the tip wage credit, of errors, a communication that had some errors, calculation errors, misstatement of wages. And I want to be the first, to say, as the leader of DOES and as a public servant, that I want to acknowledge that those errors occurred. And that I have worked with my staff to put a plan in place to ensure that they never occur again. And that I'm grateful for the leadership with Sean Townsend, and been able to work with them on bringing this to a close and to a resolution. I do believe the last time I was briefed by staff earlier this week that we have pretty much resolved any letters that may have had errors or outstanding issues. There are some businesses that did not, correctly report, in which we are going through some administrative actions with OAH. But for the most part, I acknowledge those errors, and my team has worked really hard to correct them. I think that's what you do when you make a mistake, is acknowledge and take responsibility. And so I'm doing that for the agency today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. How many complaints have you received in the past year about from the employees who are indicating they were not paid fairly or in accordance with the law?
So I have 200. No, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Because I think I have the FY23 numbers.
Yes.
For you. So in FY23, I had 352 complaints from employees. And I'm going to give you just a high level overview of the type of complaints that we've received, because they extend beyond the tip wage. I had accrued sick and safe leave complaints. I had living wage complaints, minimum wage complaints, retaliation complaints for employees who have identified or have made a complaint and feel as if they were retaliated against, in which we have made reference or referred them to OAH or OHR, and then actual wage payment complaints. So actually the number total is 352 complaints in FY 23.
And how many of those are wage complaints if you have that?
243.
So the lion's share are wage complaints of the 352.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Now, I would say, though, as part of the wage complaints, the minimum wage, we break it out separately, but minimum wage and overtime complaints, with an additional 43 of those. So that would bring it to, what is that, 286?
Yeah.
286 of the 352 were related to wage payments and minimum wage and overtime complaints.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're talking to the right office then. Yes.
They are. And, we do work with OAG and support them.
Mhm.
And we also refer to OAG as well. So it's definitely a partnership, but we understand the value of making sure that people receive, payment for the hours worked.
All right. And so on those cases that are, do you have MOU or protocol where you automatically share this file with the Attorney General, and then the Attorney General determines if there is a need to do additional legal follow-up, or is there some other protocol that comes into play in your office that causes you to turn over some of the issues?
So I would say there's really two ways that we approach this. One is when it's very egregious, large number of complaints coming from one particular, company. That would be a good example for us to refer to the Attorney General, where they obviously have the manpower and the muscle to help with enforcement. And then also the Office of the Attorney General comes to us, because employees can go directly to them if they have an issue and report with them as well. So it's bilateral. But for us, the most egregious cases, and egregious meaning high in number for one particular employer, we refer to Office of Attorney General.
Okay, thank you. During the roundtable last month, the National Payroll Reporting Consortium, NPRC, testified that they have repeatedly advised that the agency's proposed reporting process was the most unique in the country, and that the cost of modifying software and systems would likely result in their membership actually leaving the district market because they are used in the District of Columbia. They also testified that they still have never seen the specifications for the planned portal, despite a number of statements that have been made from the agency that it would be forthcoming. And the last response from the agency was August 29th, 2023. Can you elaborate on this, these comments, of course, and where are you in any discussion with the consortium, and whether or not the consortium is thinking clearly about where the government is in trying to implement this portal?
You know, the consortium has some strong positions and have made some strong statements regarding compliance and the use of the tip wage portal. You know, I'd like to remind everybody that DOES doesn't create the laws. We just implement them, and we enforce them and maintain compliance with them. And so that is very important to state. We have taken what's been given to us and tried to create a compliance and implementation plan. They have submitted to us a series of letters. They've also provided verbal feedback about our use of the tip wage portal, all of which we have received and we have heard. So I feel like I'm fully briefed and aware of their position. As it relates to the use of the tip wage portal and the requirements, we have discussed high level what the reporting requirements will be, which is baked into the legislation. So we're just taking the law itself and provisions in the law and creating a system based on the provisions of the law. When there is something else to look at, we can provide. But other than that, we don't have anything else to give them. I would say perhaps their frustration may be a bit misguided, as we literally just implement the law that was created. And so I've heard them very clearly. I understand their position. I don't have an opinion other than we're just implementing what we are required to implement.
And so from the agency's perspective, what do you see the legislation directing you to do as it relates to the portal?
Sure. So first is to provide certified payroll records, which have detailed information about the employee, the hours worked, the amount of money they were paid, both the tip wage and the tip credit. I also understand that the law requires a certain time frame in which it should be reported quarterly. Thank you. Weekly. Weekly, it should be reported to us. And so those are the requirements that I understand that the system and the requirements of the system are going to be built off of.
All right. And so you currently receive weekly payroll listings from the restaurants, right? As an example.
Correct.
Okay. What additionally would be required in order for the, and you receive it electronically in the portal, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what additional information would be required? That I'm trying to understand why it's so complicated, why a national organization like the consortium is feeling or is expressing that it's most difficult to work in DC on this matter.
I want to understand too. I mean, I think I have, what was the number? 560, over 500 employers are currently submitting payroll records right now. So I want to understand why they feel so strongly about it too, because we have a good number of employers that are submitting records. I think that there is some that they've taken issue with how the reports are submitted. Maybe it doesn't appear to be as modern or easy to submit reports. But I believe compliance is the cost of entry in business. And so if you want to play in this game, you gotta comply. So it's difficult for me to kind of understand and wrap my mind around the challenges that they continue to communicate about this. But perhaps it's in the legislation itself and the requirements in the legislation.
All right, so the system that we're using today, if I understand you correctly, 500 employers, are these all employers with tip workers?
The majority of them are, yes.
Okay, so these employers are using and submitting to you information regarding their tipped workers.
Correct.
All right. And okay.
Yes. And can I just correct the record here on 2 points? Because initially I said quarterly, but there was a change in the law, because at one point the law was a report quarterly to weekly. So that there was a shift from quarterly to weekly. And then the second point is that the report will have to have a 13-week breakdown instead of a 3-month aggregate. And so that's a high amount of data analysis and disaggregated data that would have to be provided. And so my thought is that there are probably some concerns about that level of detail being offered or being submitted to us.
Okay, so currently 500 employers use the system that you currently have, and they report their tip workers information.
Yes.
Okay, and they do that on a weekly basis.
They're just, yes. Okay, so they have to provide weekly data.
Okay.
Okay, but on a quarterly basis. So
I got you.
Yes.
I understand weekly, but quarterly total. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's how this portal is operating today.
That is correct.
Okay. So where are the problems? Help me understand where the problems are.
I mean, I can only summarize what I believe the problems that they have with the issue, but from our perspective, we don't find it to be that problematic given the high number of employers who are reporting and complying.
Okay, so 500 employers, primarily all are employee tip workers.
Yes.
Okay, the 500 is within what universe? 3,000 or 700 or 600?
You mean like when you say the universe of employees that they have, or what
universe of the employers that use tip workers?
Okay. So we have at least, and we will follow up with you after the hearing, the exact number. And actually, Alex, I'll have you provide the last 3 fiscal years. Okay. Of the number of employers that have reported in the tipped wage portal. I will provide for you the last 3 fiscal years, but we have at least 500 employers that are submitting certified wage reports in the tipped portal.
All right. And where I'm going is, if there were, let's say, 3,000 employers in the city that use tip workers, that would mean only 500 of the 3,000 are using.
Understood.
It. Okay, that's what I'm trying.
So we'll see if we have that data. we'll see if we have that data available.
Because I'm understanding that perhaps the consortium is saying those that the consortium may represent are not using the portal. They're not reporting this because they're waiting for some new whatever to happen to the build out of a portal that they feel more comfortable using. I guess it's the best way to explain it.
So I would need to, and I'll see if my labor economist can provide that data to me. But I would need to understand the total universe of employers that could potentially report in order to determine who may not be using it. I know who is using it. I know how many are using it. I know what they're submitting when they use it, but I don't know the total universe and population of those that could be using it.
The understanding we got from the consortium is that there would be a new separate portal that would be used just for tip wage reporting. That would report, I'm assuming, the provisions of the law. And so that would be different from what the 500 employers currently use. That's the impression that I'm getting. Is that your impression?
No, I don't have that impression. Okay, so, all right. Once the tipped wage is eliminated, there will be no portal, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, and so we are, whether we're running towards a timeline or we're slowly marching towards a timeline, we know sometime between now and the next few years, it's going to be eliminated. That we know for sure.
But you still will need a portal for just reporting the wages.
No, because the wages are.
How will we know what wages are being paid? Whether or not the minimum wage is being paid by employers of.
So I know what wages are being paid in the district because they have to report it for unemployment insurance. So I know what wages are being.
So the unemployment insurance report comes in irrespective of whatever the wage
Correct.
is. Okay. So that is your gauge. So this portal that you're utilizing now is the new separate portal. And so I'm trying to understand why it works for 500 thereabouts and not for whatever the remainder of those who employ tip workers.
This is why I think their concerns with us are a bit misguided.
Okay.
Because I think the real issue is the challenge that they have with the law, not how the law is implemented. Once the tipped wage and tip credit go away, there will be no monitoring of that. But if I wanted to know what wages employers are reporting now, I have a gauge or mechanism to do that, and that's through unemployment insurance. Matter of fact, the tipped wage portal is tangentially connected to the unemployment insurance system, tax system.
All right. Well, just wondering, have you given consideration to asking for an opinion from the OAG as to whether or not this third portal works or should work or?
No, I've not asked for an opinion from OAG on that. I don't view it as given the number of employers that I have that are utilizing it, I'm really only hearing from one particular group, maybe two particular groups. So I haven't found it necessary to ask OAG for an opinion.
All right. I'm just reading a reference here that the code 321009.01 (A)(1) says quarterly wage reports were required to be filed by third-party payroll providers, not tipped wage employers such as restaurants. All right.
Yes, that was a change to the law. And that in itself is unique to require many of which are small businesses to use a TPA, a third party administrator. That is very unique. However, my job is to implement enforcement and compliance programs for the law. And so that is what I do, but that in itself is a unique requirement.
Thank you very much. And we will move on.
But you see here the rub and the connection with the elimination of the tipped wage. What we're talking about is, and I've thought a lot about this, making further financial investments in a new IT system for a law that sooner or later is going to go away. Should we be investing hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars for a new system, given all of the other competing priorities we have? And is there a way to do it cheaper? I'm not suggesting that we don't comply with the law, but I am suggesting that we should find a way to be cost efficient and maybe leverage the technology and information we have. And if we have a group of 500 people who seem to be at least 500 employers, I'm sure many, if not all, are represented by some sort of third party. Maybe we find out what works for them and how they haven't had any problems and compare that to those that have cited issues and concerns. But I'm trying to find a middle ground here. But I am a steward of government funds, and I'm not 100% sold that we should be investing millions in a new IT system that won't be needed now into a few years.
What is the estimated investment we would be making in this portal?
I'm going to give you an off the top of my head rough estimate, but I'd be willing to bet at least $400,000 to $500,000, and that's not including staff time to train and get up to speed, materials that we would have to develop that explain how to utilize the system. I think it could easily, with all of those things combined, could be in upwards of $700,000 to $800,000 to just stand up.
And does that include staff?
No, that's just the system and training
okay.
and the collateral materials, that explain and outline how to use the system.
Okay, and what would we do? Would we designate 3 FTEs to run this program, or how many do you use now? I guess I should ask.
That's a great question. And I have it. Okay, this isn't just for tip wage, but in my Office of Wage and Hour, I have 32 FTEs, but that includes compliance with all labor laws. So that is minimum wage, tip wage, sick and safe leave.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all of those labor laws that we enforce.
So at least 1/10 of the work could be attributed to tipped workers, I would assume.
Yeah, I'd probably say yes. I'd probably say a slightly bit more. And my staff confirmed it's about 900K estimate. It was 900K the estimate that we previously received to do this new work with the system was about 900K.
Okay, and that includes FTEs, the 900.
No, that's just the system.
Just the system,
That's-
okay.
that's the
Yeah,
system.
I'm trying to, okay.
Yeah, no, that's
All
just the
right.
system. That's not FTEs. That's just the system.
All right, so we're talking, so we're getting close to 2 million. All right.
Yeah, it's just the system.
Just wanted to get a sense of what
Mhm.
what our universe is.
You know, we had a really successful, and it's a model that I'd like to bring back, but we had a really successful education compliance grant, which we had a grant competition. We made 2 awards. One award went to a community-based organization to serve employees. So they essentially would be navigators, and they took complaints on behalf of DOES and helped folks in different languages, maybe even folks with disabilities, file complaints and inform them about their rights. Then we had another grantee we gave to support businesses and provide technical assistance with getting into compliance. I think that sort of approach coupled with the technology system, although again, I want to put a finer point, it could be going away sooner than later, is the right approach that we should be making when it comes to compliance and reporting.
That I like that idea. I think it does make sense. Would you also be thinking a little bit about having staff compliance officers maybe visit some or all of the businesses where you get a complaint?
So,
And then asking to review records, physical records?
so this is a bit controversial.
Oh, it
as
is?
well.
Okay,
It's a
I didn't
little
know that, but
controversial.
okay.
And there was an opinion provided, and we should share it. I'll get it from Mr. Sheik, but we call it proactive and strategic enforcement. So the reason why I'm saying it's a bit controversial, because there was a period of time across the country where we had compliance staff going out and asking to see records of people who were working. And there were certain industries that were targeted. There were certain groups of people who were targeted. They may have been asked for like immigration documentation. And so we don't want to come in, guns a-blazing, making people feel uncomfortable, but we want to make sure that employers are doing their part, employees understand. And so we've taken this approach called strategic and proactive enforcement, where we're not just going out to make sure people are in compliance, but it's a warmer handoff. We're introducing ourselves, we're showing sharing our posters, our materials. It's not necessarily a gotcha and show us your documentation, that you're legal to work. It's a bit controversial, so we're taking a warmer and a different approach.
Well, I mean, I certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure the community does too. But it just seems to me that if you are concerned with compliance, then you have to check one way or the other. And you have no checks now other than, as you said, unemployment insurance. That's your only safeguard. And it just, to me, we got to do something during this interim, and perhaps 2 million spent on these other systems might be a better expenditure than trying to create a portal that satisfies with nuances that satisfies everyone. So I'm just looking for a way. And, given that we're post-COVID, having a visitation from the government could be a positive as
Yes.
well as a negative.
Yes.
No,
I think
and your idea of bringing a bag of goodies is probably a good way too. Here are some things you need to know, blah, 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 here.
Yes, we just don't want to create the sort of interaction where people think, we're checking their papers or looking to see if, they could be legally working. We also want to appear as a trusted, not necessarily partner because we manage compliance, but we want to build trust and credibility as well. So we are going out in the field. We do random audits. Our random audit methodology is based on the industry that's had the highest number of complaints. So we are doing those sorts of things. It's just, we call it strategic and proactive enforcement.
Well, I like your name of your program. I think everyone would be, very receptive to that. I do not see why you would need to see name and address of an employer, but maybe I'm missing something. I think it's, how many you reported this week, how many are in your tipped work status. And let's say you go into, as an example, a restaurant, seating for 500, unusual, but okay, and they only have 2 tipped workers. Yeah, you would be concerned about
Sure.
that. Okay,
Yes.
or that's what they're reporting. When it's probably 25,
Yes.
So I'm just
Understood.
saying, I think there is a protocol that can be created that would get you the information you need, but spare all other information so that immigration status would not, as an example, would be an issue. I would think. Your shop is very sharp and it knows how to get
Understood.
its work done. But I thank you for even entertaining the idea that there are other ways for us to get or help the community to be compliant on this law.
Understood.
Thank you. As we've been talking, I've heard from the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington. They actually were the primary presenters at our last roundtable in October. And of course, they were most concerned about this portal is seen, but there were a couple of cases where you have already explained, spoken to, where there were some errors. And I guess they're really concerned about that more than anything. And so can you just speak a minute about what are the safeguards that you put in place so that hopefully, you never can have no errors, but
Sure.
the point is to eliminate the error process as much as possible.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The first safeguard is a level of a multi-layer level of reviews that occur prior to the letter going out. And those reviews would include methodology used to compute the actual fine, reviews and sign off by both the deputy of the program and the general counsel of the program prior to submission or submitting to the general public. So that is one step. 2, ensuring that in each letter that there is a clear mechanism to challenge or counter whatever is listed in the letter. Therefore, allowing the businesses to have an opportunity to provide supplemental or even initial or additional information to resolve the matter before going straight to fine. So those are the 2 steps that we have put in place.
Okay, so the multi-level of review prior to the letter going to the employer.
Correct.
And then indicating that there's a way to sort of cure the situation if they care to.
Correct.
And then the third is you would then release what to the public?
So no,
If anything.
making sure, well, not release to the public, but making sure that there is a mechanism in which people can challenge or provide additional information to cure.
Okay. All right. I thought I heard that it would be released to the public and I was like, oh, website, oh, they do great things, don't they? Okay, that's not the intention. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Just checking to make sure I have all of the questions that we need.
And Councilmember Bonds, as I know you like data points from our office. On the issue of the letter with the errors, the team has cleared up 86 reports. And there are 10 remaining employers that have appealed or refused to respond. And so, there are 10 here that we're still actively working on responding, or they may have appealed to the Office of Administrative Hearings.
Okay, can you please ride herd on these 10 that are remaining? Because it to me, it's troubling if there is a situation where someone just says, I'm not going to respond to this. They're doing business in our city, and they're doing business with our consumers, the public. So we have to protect the public too. So
Understood.
Yeah.
Yes, we will do that, and then I will make sure that Alex and my Ledge team provide some follow-up information on what we've been able to close out and the status of those 10
Okay.
remaining.
please. And I believe your agency does not have enforcement authority on anything. Am I correct?
We have limited enforcement authority.
Okay,
We have subpoena power. We have the ability to like if you're in non-compliance and have not paid, we could potentially hold up your clean hands if you're doing business with the district. So we have some limited enforcement authority.
okay. And so you may reach a point where the 10 may need to receive something in writing
Yes,
stipulating next steps,
yes,
or
yes,
next potential steps.
yes,
Okay,
for
thank
sure.
you.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to address that and clear that up.
Yeah. Times have changed. People are, wanting to have instant gratification. We can't give them that, but we want to make sure that they know that we are working diligently on behalf of this community.
Understood.
Just wanted to think we have one or two questions
Okay.
about. I think we spent most of our time on tip wage. We know a little bit more about the unemployment insurance. But and we have your numbers from, I think, last presentation, where you had the number of claims filed at that time it's only through February. So at that time, it was about 7,739. And you have new numbers, I'm sure. And I think you presented some of them in your testimony.
Oh, okay. So I did, I believe in my testimony, I said, I had 15,621 traditional unemployment insurance claims filed as of 9/28/23. I've paid out to date in UI, traditional UI, 75,122,510.
Okay. Well, let me ask a little bit about the number of staff that are assigned, the various issues. We know that previously the 70 different codes that may show up in the UI system. I believe about 7 are frequently used. And of those, they're not all that indicate fraud. It might be missing information, and what have you. And so what I wanted to know, how many of those codes is it still 7, about 7 that are showing up the most? And are they fraud codes, or are they missing information from an application?
Yeah, everyone's so interested in the codes, which is very interesting, but
Well, let me just say this, Doctor. When you put out in the airways that there were 7D,
yes,
and I remember asking you, I said 7, you said
yes.
7D, I said 70. The whole world shook because that's a phenomenal number. So that's what happened.
Yes, no, understood. So yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a small subset of the total population of error codes. The most common error codes that are used are related to multi-state claims. Someone's filed or worked in multiple states, fraud, maybe an overpayment that has occurred previously when they've collected unemployment, because we have many people who cycle on and off unemployment, missing or incomplete information. So that's just a sample of a small subset of codes that are used frequently.
All right. And so walk me through what happens when someone makes a multi-state claim. How do we handle that?
So what happens is that an unemployed individual has, I'm going to give you 2 examples. One example, an individual has filed for unemployment insurance in the District of Columbia where they've last worked, the last job they held. When we process their unemployment insurance claim and run their social security number against a larger wage database, we find out, and it's flagged for having wages in another state. And so in that case, they may have to also file in another state as well, or we may have to offset the amount of unemployment insurance benefits they would have received for us, because they may not have completely and fully reported the wages that they have earned in another state as well. So that's one example. Another example is that they've applied for unemployment insurance benefits at the same time in more than one jurisdiction. And so in both examples, we have an interstate wage coordinators. We have a handful of them that work with the other states to try to clear up any issues regarding the claim and come to some sort of understanding or agreement on how the claim should proceed.
Okay. And I want to understand this, where you said a worker worked at DC, and also when you do the check, you discover they worked in another state, and you might offset what they would be due in another state. Am I correct?
Yes.
And what you pay them.
Yes. So,
okay.
And I'm going to use completely just an example, since we've been talking a lot about skilled labor today.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
going to use a skilled labor example. We may have a laborer who has picked up the last job that they worked just so happened to be in DC, but in the base period, which is a period of time in which we look at the wages you've collected, the laborer has worked in different jurisdictions, maybe wherever the job was available. And so once they've filed a claim and we determine that there are wages in the base period in another state or jurisdiction, we look at the total amount of wages that have been paid. And so based on the amount that has been paid, we work with the other out-of-state or interstate wage coordinator to get a full understanding of all of the wages and then provide some sort of direction or instruction to the unemployed claimant on how to proceed forward. And it could be, depending upon the amount of money that has been made, that we could reduce the amount of wages that they'd be eligible for in the District of Columbia. Let's say out of 12 months, they worked 8 months in Maryland and 4 months in DC. So they'd have more hours and wages earned in Maryland than they would in the District of Columbia. So they're probably entitled to more money in Maryland than they would in the District of Columbia.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much for that. One of the pieces of legislation that's moving in our system here in DC is the issue of making sure that anyone who works in the District of Columbia, whether it's 2 hours or more, that they are paid the minimum wage. And so I can see but they also have worked somewhere else, another jurisdiction where the minimum wage is not $17 an hour. So I can see that it may be something that you'll have to deal with eventually.
I'm sure, yes,
Yes.
we would.
So I was just thinking about you,
Yes.
about this piece of legislation.
Yes, we would certainly, and we look forward to, providing any sort of technical assistance or feedback on implications to any of
Okay.
our benefit programs or labor laws. We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, next case, overpayment. What
Hey.
happens with that?
Let's talk about overpayments. Let's talk about overpayments. So there are times when we have claimants who file for unemployment. They collect unemployment, but they collect it under a false pretense. They may have underreported their wages. They may have not reported their wages. And once we find out, we take a look at their benefits and the wages, and we make a determination, did they lawfully and correctly provide the information that they were supposed to and collect the correct amount of money? If we determine that they did not, they do have the ability to appeal. But if the appeal, in our position is upheld, then overpayment is established, and you will then owe the District of Columbia money for collecting unemployment insurance benefits under false pretenses. Very, very few times is it a mistake by the claimant. Very, very few times. Matter of fact, I would say the majority of the time it's people who have knowingly, they started work again and they got one final payment while they were working, and instead of returning it back, they just kept the check. So those are some examples of overpayments.
I understand. And then you mentioned straight out fraud.
Yes.
What's in that category?
So fraud could include, but not limited to, identity theft. Let's see, misstating wages or not reporting wages. Let's see, what are other types of identity theft that we see? Or fraud, excuse me. I would say the largest category of fraudulent claims is related to identity theft and misstatement or unreporting of wages. Which one? Yes. Well, I mean, when a technology or a tool is used to steal a person's identity and create a fraudulent unemployment insurance claim. And when I mean a technology or a tool or an application, is that you don't have a single person stealing another person's identity. You have a person that's written a script or a code and developed a program to steal hundreds and thousands of people's identity.
All right. I appreciate hearing that. As you were speaking, of course, I was thinking about the data breach at the Board of Elections, not at the Board of Elections, but with their vendor. And so we're still working through that. It could be the entire registered list, but of course, there is insurance that is in play now. But I just was thinking there'll be some that slip through that you'll get and what have you. Most
So-
likely.
We have, and I feel like they're firefighters, but they're fraud fighters, and every day they're on the front line and on computers fighting to prevent fraud.
Yes.
I talked about it in my testimony, but we just implemented these brand new kiosks in the American Job Center called ID Me. So you can verify your identity by coming into the American Job Center or utilizing the application. And we've all experienced it before. You might submit something online. It'll ask you a bunch of questions. What's the first car you drove? Where was the first house you ever bought? So we have additional layers of security. We have multi-factor authentication in place, but it is a multi-layer approach to secure our UI benefits system. And this is a direct result of the pandemic. We did not have this type of fraud prior to the pandemic.
Okay, well said. Let's talk about the time frame for getting these claims finalized. During the oversight hearing, a public witness testified that UI staff member confirmed that the agency had received all the necessary documentation to process their claim and even hand delivered a second form of ID to another employee, but the claim was later deemed ineligible. After several phone calls, the witness noticed that their claim was denied due to failing to upload their ID. What is the agency's plan to ensure that the system works more effectively for the claimants once they are working with one of your adjusters to make things work in the system?
So I would say in that particular example, the ID Me kiosk and identity proofing software that we have purchased that's used across the country is going to eliminate the issues with proving someone's identity. That's the first step. We did receive a grant, I think it was $864,000 from the Department of Labor to implement fraud reduction issues, but that's the example you provided is really about fraud and proving someone's identity. I'm pretty excited about launching the new unemployment insurance modernized benefit system, which we are planning for a release very, very, very soon. I will have Alex share with you the date in the next couple of weeks. But it's going to be in the next couple of months that we will release a new system. This new system will be mobile ready. You'll be able to use it on different sorts of platforms. It's not the old system that we've had for 44 or 5 years. So it's going to change and the way that people apply for unemployment insurance benefits, and it will be far more efficient than what we're currently doing today.
Okay. I guess I'll kind of leave it there then. If
Yes.
you're does this mean that those remaining records, I think it was something like 15,000, well, originally it was like 70,000 error codes, that you are going to send those or reach out to those that you believe are identity theft cases, a letter, and tell them to go through this system.
No.
And therefore, the verification can happen sooner, one way or the
Oh.
other.
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay, so and that number is gonna always be fluid, because remember, the Department of Labor requires us to adjudicate every single case. So just
correct.
think, I got a bot out there that's filing 1,000 claims in 5 minutes. So I have to look
Yeah.
at every single case. So for the cases that we believe are real, the
Mhm.
real cases, they will receive communication from us asking them to either come in or follow whatever necessary steps online to prove their identity.
And, okay, so the ID me
Yes.
will not work for those. They still need to come in, meet with your staff, bring their paperwork.
No, the ID me will work for those.
It
The
will.
ID me will work for the individuals who may be caught in a backlog due to identity theft or fraudulent claims. That's who ID me will work for. So they'll receive communication, and we'll have Alex confirm, but I believe they've started receiving communication in the last couple of weeks to come in and complete the ID me process.
All right, is the communication from you or from US Labor?
Oh, from DOES, the
Okay,
communications
all
from
right,
us.
okay.
They're getting it now. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So they've started receiving that, but
All right.
but I want you to know that because the way that unemployment insurance has evolved and changed due to the pandemic, that number of fraudulent claims,
It will continue.
it will
Yeah,
continue.
it will. I got one last night from the personnel office, and only because it was so blurred that I realized
Oh.
this is not, yeah, yeah, stuff happens. Not for
Oh.
me, but it was on
Oh.
a similar matter
Okay.
to verify the salary of a staffer.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were saying you
No,
got one
no,
from
no, no,
us.
no.
I was like,
But
oh my
I'm just,
God.
no, I was just following up on
Got
the
it. Okay.
continuation. It just keeps,
Yeah, that it's
continues to roll in.
it's a common occurrence, unfortunately, right now, that, people are filing fraudulent claims but yes.
So you did a great job during the pandemic,
Thank you.
working effectively with people the best that you could. So what is your staff level? Does it work? And what I mean is, yes, of course they work. I mean, does it meet the demands that you have?
So I have 144 people on staff right now, on the UI team. That is, so at the height of the pandemic, I probably had closer to 300 people, including contractors. I don't right now. I have 144. The way our funding model is from the Department of Labor is times of high unemployment, you get more money for staff. Times of lower unemployment, you get less money. We're in a downturn in low unemployment, which is great, but we have less money for less administrative funding for the unemployment insurance program.
Okay. Well, we want to keep it at low unemployment.
We do, and we try to maximize all the resources we have and to be as efficient as possible.
So under accurate circumstances where the information that is submitted for an unemployment claim, how long does it take to get through the system? From making application to actually receiving payment?
So we look at our benchmark is 21 days. That's what we strive to meet, is 21 days.
Okay.
But depending, two things. One, during the time of the pandemic, we've been transparent about that 21 time frame wasn't always met. And post pandemic, we are closer to our performance, acceptable level of performance. And so right now we have so in our first payment promptness measure, which is, how many people receive their first payment within 21 days, we are reporting 72%, and that was for, and we look at this weekly, so that was for the last week in October. So we're at 72% of the people receive their first payment within 21 days. So we're getting back to the higher levels of performance, acceptable levels of performance that we were pre-pandemic.
So how much time, well, firstly, how many backlog cases do you currently carry?
So our current backlog of cases, and this also includes the fraudulent claims, because
Yes,
we have to look at all of them. And this number will continue to go up and down by the day, but approximately 39,709. That's in the backlog, and that includes fraudulent claims or duplicative claims.
All right.
Yeah, but in FY 23, and we just closed 23, we closed 21,413 cases. That's not even what we paid out. That's just 21,000 cases that we closed. The majority of those cases are fraudulent.
Okay, and I think at that time you had 61,000 that were outstanding, and you closed 21,000 of the 61, correct? Thereabouts.
Yes,
Okay.
thereabouts.
Okay. I didn't read all of the numbers, but you also reported 7,700 additional new claims. So I understand how, and the public understands how it continues.
It continues.
That's a service that continues.
Yes.
24/7. It just continues to roll.
Yeah, and so we're probably not probably. We have to change the way we staff. If the Department of Labor and myself and other state secretaries of labor have been pretty vocal about this, if we have to adjudicate every single case, even if we know it's a bot and it's fraudulent, then we need more hands, because it takes a human being to review each case. And so 144 people, having 60,000, clearing 21,000, you can imagine the amount of hours and time that we spend. So we have to change our staffing model to now adjust to our new normal and the new way of doing business.
Well, the U.S. Labor, as a member of our federal government, requires that no one anywhere, anyhow, pays out any dollars unless you've done multiple checks. I remember that from,
Yes.
So
yes.
What is U.S. Labor saying about this? They're going to give you some help?
They say the same things that we say, which is that their resources are limited. So that, we've asked for it. Again, times of higher unemployment, we get more administrative funding, and we're not in a high unemployment time. The unemployment insurance program is primarily run off of federal funding, and a lot of folks don't realize that. And so we don't have a lot of local funding that's supporting this effort, and we just try to be as efficient as possible. But they understand, and they understand the challenges that states are having.
So do we have any local funding supporting the UI program?
Very little. I will have to, if we do very little, I'll have to go back and take a look to see. No, I don't think we have it broken down either. Let me take a look and see what we have on the local side, but the majority of the funding is federal.
Right, and we do understand that. I think it would be very helpful if we could get some understanding of what the local tranche is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very small.
Yeah, and well, as we move into the budget season, there'll be questions that we have to answer as to what the budget will look like, and given that it's not accelerating as it once was. I'll just leave it at that. We don't want something that we don't know about to
Yes,
slip through and we not have the resources we need, since this is a program that we really can't control. It's the nature of the marketplace.
that's correct. And as
So-
we approach November 17th, which is our next day that we look at for a government shutdown, as you can imagine, we're right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Everyone is, we're trying to wrap our mind around it. How we prepare and how I ask my staff to prepare is probably different than a lot of other agencies. And the reality is, if there is a government shutdown, it will impact how we, we will not have the same sort of Thanksgiving break that we may have had if there wasn't a government
Right.
shutdown.
Correct.
We'll be working on the front lines trying to get people money to get ready for their Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
So, we're going to look at the staffing model, and we may have to make some adjustments, but I'm committed to being as efficient and a good steward of the federal funds that we do have running this program.
Okay. Well, we note that the agency staff, that UI staff, is inundated with manual system processes, which delay the issuance of benefits to claimants, and that under the current system, it's difficult to modify. In turn, it takes hours of coding to change. Is that a fair statement of the realities that you face?
Yes.
Okay. So this modernization project and the smart sheet tracker will be a blessing.
Yeah, the smart sheet tracker has gone away.
Oh, it has.
Yes. Oh, wait, now, is this for the legislative smart sheet tracker? Is that how you're communicating with the escalation cases? Is that what you're talking about, the escalation cases of a smart sheet tracker with the legislative team, or another mechanism?
That would be what we would talk about if that's the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were using a smart sheet to communicate with the various council offices on escalation cases they wanted us to look at.
Mhm.
So for that, we probably want to keep some sort of tool to communicate between council office and our leg team. So that's a different, that's just a tool that we.
All right, that tool, can you henceforth start sending us a copy of what you send to, I assume you send it to primarily to the wards, because I would imagine, as a ward council member, that would be very important. Or can you just make sure that we get a copy of what you send?
Okay, I think, and let me just clarify and make sure I'm correct here, and I think I am. We were asking council offices to put in cases they wanted us to look at.
Right.
That has scaled down. I had some note here about the number of escalation cases. Oh, we only have 3 cases right now from council offices that we've received in the last month that we've been asked to review. Okay. So if you want a list of those 3 cases,
yeah,
we can share.
Yeah,
that.
I'm just saying, when you get it, if you would let us know so that we can kind of have a sense, because otherwise we're whistling in the dark.
Sure.
When,
yes,
my counterparts are not saying anything other than, well, DOES is lazy on doing
contacted
this,
them
and I have no
they
way
have not
of,
helped us.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Understood.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So yes, we will share the cases and which council offices
Yes.
they have come from. And when we get referrals from council offices, we will share with you who. And so that way, if you're walking in the hall and they say, what's going on with that DOES? We sent this, you'll know.
Right. And I find that frequently people will visit multiple offices.
Absolutely.
And so
they're forum shopping. Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
Yes. No, we can do that. That's not a
Thank
problem.
you.
That's not a problem. You have a long list of follow-ups here. Do you have?
I
them
know.
here? Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
you're gonna need 2 assistants.
Yeah. I think she has them all written here.
All right.
3 is probably the lowest that we've seen in a couple of years.
Okay. Okay, one of the milestones that you've shared doing performance oversight was the creation of an exclusive dashboard for unemployment insurance claims. Have we touched on that yet today?
We have not.
What is this dashboard and what are its benefits? Or is this something that was thought about and is now being rethought or reconsidered?
Yeah, I mean, now during the pandemic, we were providing what felt like weekly a snapshot of all unemployment insurance claims that were coming in, and like a running tally of all unemployment claims, and then the type of claims. We stopped doing that post-pandemic. A matter of fact, I think at one point daily, we were putting out 200,000 claims, 205,000 claims a day. But we have stopped doing that. So that information we don't. But if you want a monthly snapshot of what unemployment looks like, and Alex will send you the link, the monthly labor market data page. Every month, I put out a press release, provides a number of people unemployed. It's broken down by ward and gender. It breaks down the unemployment rate. And every month in press release, I put it out with a slide deck that goes with it.
That would be very helpful.
There's also industry information by occupation. So every month, a matter of fact, once you send the link, you can go to it every month. It comes out like clockwork. That's
what we'll do. Yes, thank you. We really want to be more forthcoming with the public about, I mean, there was some thought a few years ago that all roads led to affordable housing. Then we moved to, wait a minute, you got to have resources for housing. So, employment became a very big arena. Then we have public safety.
Yes.
But underneath public safety is still this employment that you're working diligently on. And so I want to make sure that folk understand this is still, one of our top focus in this government, in this community.
Yes. And the Talent Ready report we put out has a lot of different, even like the number of services we provide people. It's pretty lengthy. We put it out annually, and then we update even by press release every single month. Because remember, it's part of the president's monthly job report.
Correct.
So I report it to the Department of Labor. So
all right.
I think we have all the data points there that you would need. It's just a matter of maybe your staff looking through.
We will.
And pulling out what means the most to you.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. We want to lift it up a little bit here.
Great.
Another major milestone that you shared was the inception of the Labor Market Awareness Dashboard.
Yes, that's up.
Okay, that's up. Okay, all right. How do you track the number of users? Or do we have any indication as to whether or not people are paying attention?
We don't track the number of users. We might, on a website usability case, track the number of clicks to the website in general. But we don't track the number of users because it's just on the web page and you can just click on it.
All right. And I'm assuming it has a list of high demand jobs. Or just general list of the different occupations.
On the monthly slide deck that we put out to accompany the press release, there is a list of high demand occupations and industries. I think it even tells the number of jobs that either grew or fell in the month and does a comparison by year. So
Okay.
that is in
Okay.
the, it's very robust. You should definitely take a
Okay,
look
we're
at it.
gonna use your link and take a look.
Okay.
All right. During performance oversight hearings, the public testified that the agency does not properly serve English language learners in the unemployment insurance system, which is a requirement by the DC Language Access Act. What's your timeline to complete these language requirements?
We do, we are in compliance. Matter of fact, I think we received an award or a recognition um, from what was it, OHR on language access. So, I really reject that comment because
Okay.
we go out of our way. Matter of fact, I am very proud that we have the only Spanish language workforce development agency website in the country. You can access DOES in Espanol if you'd like. And that should show everyone in the public our commitment to diversity and inclusion and language access. We also received, and we were amongst the first states to receive it, a $2.2 million grant from the Department of Labor for our unemployment insurance to support language access compliance, diversity, and equity and inclusion. So I'm very, very, very proud. It is a strategic goal of the agency. And I am making sure that there is no wrong door and every single person, regardless of the language you speak and all the language within language access, you can have access to Department of Employment services.
And so that leads me to just ask, what do we do about there are many other languages in the city so how do you handle that today? I mean, is there some notification on your website that instructs, give us a call at this number or and there's someone there who will speak the language that can facilitate them, or how is it handled?
Well, we use the language access line to support, job seekers and district residents and claimants. We also I believe it's on DC Networks. I believe through Google Translate, you can access the system in different languages. So we've made significant effort, not just to make sure that we're in compliance, because that's the minimum, but that we're serving people well. And so those are the ways that people can access our services and our information.
All right, well, we have exhausted our list of questions.
Oh, okay.
And we've exhausted you, and we thank you again. And thanks to everyone who has taken time to listen and be a part of our hearing today. We believe we all have learned valuable information about the tip wage reporting process and the unemployment insurance program administered by the Department of Employment Services. And I hope that the public feels more informed as to how the programs function and that the agencies are even more energized to address the challenges that have been identified today. If any member of the public would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of DOES, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL@dccouncil.gov. The hearing record will remain open until Monday, the 20th of November at 5 p.m. when it closes. The next committee meeting will be a public roundtable on Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. We will begin at 1 p.m. and it's regarding the district government's sexual harassment policies and procedures. Therefore, we conclude this hearing today. The time is 4:22 p.m., same day we started, November 9th, 2023, and I thank everyone again.
Thank you.